everybody. I'm Beatty Vedos, and yes, like Sammy Davis Jr., I think we all need to be exactly who we are and to be able to really give ourselves permission to live a very, very authentic life so that we're not living our life for the public and our families and for what the media tells us we should and should not be doing and feeling and buying. But in fact, really being able to dig into ourselves and figure out what is it that we want, what is it that we don't want, and to be really honest with ourselves on an ongoing basis, to be checking in, which is what I ask you to do every single week here on the Ask Beatty Show, to ensure that you are really living a life that is in your best interest. And for those of you who may be tuning in for the very first time and you're wondering, so who is Beatty Vedos and what is she actually talking about here on the Ask Beatty Show? Well, I'm a nationally recognized psychotherapist and sex therapist. I'm the author of a groundbreaking book on relationships, and I say this every single week. It is a book that I only wish that I had when I was beginning my own dating and relationship life, because the reality is that despite all of these self-help books and therapists and coaches of various different kinds, we really are in a unfortunate downward spiral when it comes to our relationships. And for those of you who actually do not know the statistics, we have a divorce rate of 48% for first marriages. The divorce rate goes up to 67% for second marriages. And I know that people are always really, really surprised, when I'm giving presentations and I'll say, well, do you know what the divorce rate for third marriages is? Well, that number is 71%. And for the last many, many, many years here on the Beatty Show, three women are still murdered every single day by their so-called intimate partner. And this is not blaming the women in any way whatsoever. So what I have learned over the years, I've been practicing now, which I can hardly believe, for over 35 years plus, through my research and clinical experience, really treating thousands and thousands of men and women and children and adolescents from every single walk of life. I have some good evidence-based news that I really want to share with you when it comes to your being able to find and maintain and sustain a healthy relationship. So, number one, what is the most important thing that we have to do and that we have to learn if we ever hope to have a successful relationship with anyone? And, I wish that we were really all on Zoom, or even better, I wish we were in an auditorium together where we would be able to see each other, where we would be able to really interact with each other. But since that is unfortunately not the case, for the moment at least, the first thing is that each of us needs to be in a good place emotionally and psychologically and psychiatrically. And the bottom line is that the buck really does stop with us. Is that if we're not in a good place, we are not going to be able to make really good decisions of a variety of different kinds, including good relationship decisions. So whether or not you're dealing with depression or anxiety or other psychiatric or psychological or emotional issues, whether we're talking about sexual abuse, whether we're talking about problems that primarily stemmed from our own family of origin, this is my message to you. Even though we cannot change history, we cannot change anything that happened a second ago, there is a way, and I have been doing this with patients for years and years and years, and doing it successfully, where people are able to emotionally work through what did and did not happen in their lives, so that once and for all, for many, many people, they are able to finally live in the moment in the present without having one foot in the past and one foot in the present. And believe me, if there was a way that I could fast forward this process where we did not have to deal with our issues, we didn't have to deal with the sexual abuse, we didn't have to deal with the substance abuse, believe me, my friends, I would have figured this out a long, long time ago, because you can ask my husband, Jim Bredos, who has been on the show many, many times, who's a sociologist and criminologist, if there was ever an impatient person in one's personal life, that is me. But professionally, of course, I have to look at the reality of what works and what does not work in helping people really be able to move forward with their lives. So that if you are struggling, whether or not you are struggling with relationship issues or you are struggling with depression that has been triggered or caused by a number of different factors in your life, I'm really, really hoping, after all, the fall season is coming. It's almost here. Actually, I can hardly believe that next week is September the 1st. Today is the day that I hope you will be able to say to yourself, I deserve to live a life that is truly in my best interest. And in order for me to do this, there are things that I am going to actually have to learn and, more importantly, put into action. And as I say to people all the time, we do not need to navigate life's ups and downs on our own. And oftentimes, the very, very best thing that you can do is to reach out and get some really good professional help. And when I say good professional help, for those of you who read my Ask Beatty columns in Dan's papers, I had written a recent article. The headline was Buyer Beware, is your therapist helpful or harmful? And there are things that we all need to look for, whether we're buying a car, whether we're buying a phone, or whether we are trying to assess whether somebody is really good for us or not good for us in our life. And that includes your therapist. So again, you can, if you want, you can just Google Ask Beatty, Dan's papers. I'm the advice columnist for Dan's papers in the Hamptons in New York City and also in Palm Beach. And I think the article, Buyer Beware, is your therapist helpful or harmful, is something that anybody at all who's contemplating looking for a therapist should absolutely read. The ramifications of good therapy, I cannot say enough. I mean, it really can and does change people's life for the better. However, the consequences and possible ramifications of having bad therapy can also destroy individuals and can destroy families as well. So getting back to my comments on relationships, so we need to be in a good place, and the relationship really needs to be the icing on the cake, and we need to be the cake. And there's so many things that we actually can do every single day to be living our life well and being good to ourselves. And this is an exercise that I oftentimes give my own patients. I have a private practice here in New York City and also in East Hampton. And for people who've been engaging in a lot of destructive and self-destructive behaviors, including relationships, I ask people to monitor what it is they are doing throughout the day. And the question that I want everybody to ask themselves, and I do this myself as well, and this is the question: is this, whatever this happens to be, is this something that is really good for me? Is this in my best interest? Is it in my best interest to go to a bar and have a bottle of vodka? Is it in my best interest to remain in an emotionally or physically or sexually or verbally relationship. I want people to be aware. We need to keep our eyes open and make sure that we are on a true wellness path. And in order to do that, we have to be really conscious, and we also have to be very, very clear about what things are good for us, and on the flip side, what things are destructive and self-destructive. So again, when it comes to relationships, we need to really be okay. The other thing, and it's amazing, isn't it amazing that with all the relationship books, I mean, there've never been ever so many self-help books on the market that there are now. And I think that people still have a long way to go. And I'm not blaming anybody and I'm not judging anybody, but we have to be a lot more savvy in learning the ingredients that really go into a healthy relationship. We have to have clarity. We have to have clarity. Otherwise, it is very, very easy to get on a destructive or self-destructive path. And of course, the third thing was the research that I did with 450 people in the Boston, Providence, and Connecticut area. And I came up with this 10-step formula. And people who know me, they know that I'm very bottom line. I have absolutely no patience with psychobabble. If something doesn't work, that's just get rid of it. So I came up with this formula that teaches us all how to assess. And I know that assess is not sexy, it's not lovey-dovey, it's not romantic, but it's absolutely critical. How to assess who's right for you and who's wrong for you before committing to any serious relationships. And it's interesting that before I did this work, and before I did the book, I would just routinely, I'd meet people, and my takeaway oftentimes would be, gee, I've met a really nice person. I've met a lovely person. Well, I don't know about you, but I would never, ever, ever make that kind of statement today. And the book came out in 2000 in the first edition. It's out in a couple of editions. And of course, you could buy it on Amazon and I think on a number of other sites as well. The book is For Better, For Worse, Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love. And today, and I think if we're honest with ourselves, the very best that we can say today about meeting really anyone for that matter is we can say, I met somebody who appears to be, and that's the key word, appears to be nice and lovely and trustworthy and intelligent. And what the research found, and this was a little depressing for someone like me who is so impatient in my personal life. The research found that it takes about a year to really find out who somebody is and isn't. Now, obviously, if there are a lot of red flags, you're not, and hopefully you're never going to stay in a relationship that is destructive or self-destructive in any ways. And I know people are lonely. We all want to connect. We all want to be in love. And yet, this is something that I write about, and I say this all the time. And I don't want people to be paranoid. I don't want people to walk around really looking over their shoulder. It's a terrible way to live. But the reality is that we do have to be careful who we let into our lives. And that holds true for us personally and also professionally and of course politically, as well. So, people will ask me, so what is your show? What are your columns? What is this really all about? And the fact is that I would say one word really describes why I have been doing the Ask Beatty show on the Progressive Radio Network. We're going into year number 13, and I have been in the local and national media, the television world, and the radio world for really for over 30 years. And what I'm hoping is that people will educate themselves and that they will feel empowered in whatever it is that they are choosing to do in terms of work, in terms of living, in terms of relationships, and that they will then be able to really keep themselves safe. And it's true, we do have to be careful who we let into our lives. And I think it is very important that we not drive ourselves crazy, but that we micromanage how we are living on a day-to-day basis. I was reading Gary Null's newsletter this morning, and again, there's so much research. For example, he's talking about studies about children and smartphones. And one of the findings, more screen time, less happiness. New study links phones to poor children and adolescent health. And compared to boys, girls experience a significantly higher increase in depression and anxiety. And the current study looking at excessive cell phone use highlights that smartphones has become increasingly problematic in the last 7 years, significantly decreasing the overall quality of life for children and adolescents. So parents, I mean, I once had a child and adolescent daughter. We need to really step up. And I know that people are on their phones all the time. It's really amazing. I was walking down Broadway on the Upper West Side this morning, literally had to just sort of be careful that people were not going to be bumping into me as they were walking down the street and looking at their phones. So I think it's really important that parents, if you have children, younger children, older children. I mean, I'll be in a supermarket and I'm seeing babies, 2-year-old kids, 3-year-old children that are looking at their phones. It would be much better if they were looking at the foods in the shelves and if there was actually some interaction that they were having with their parents. Um, Another interesting finding that I read today in Gary Null's newsletter, and this had to do with sedentary behavior. And the study found that sedentary behavior is an independent risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. And this was a 7-year study. And I found this particularly interesting that it said, according to a study published in Alzheimer's and Dementia, researchers found that increased sedentary behavior, and what that means is time spent sitting or lying down in aging adults, was associated with worse cognition and brain shrinkage in areas related to risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. And the team of researchers, they examined the relationship between sedentary behavior and neurodegeneration among 404 adults aged 50 and older. And the study participants, so they wore a watch that measured their activity continuously over the span of a week. And their sedentary time was then related to their cognitive performance, and brain scans captured over a 7-year follow-up period. So listen to the really interesting results. Participants who spent more time sedentary were more likely to experience the cognitive decline and neurodegenerative changes regardless. And I found this particularly interesting, regardless of how much they exercised. And so even though we're exercising, We need to move. We need to walk. This morning was a particularly interesting morning for me. I woke up and of course I wanted to prepare for the show and I wanted to take Cha-Cha, our little dog, out. And I came back and had a cup of coffee and knew I was looking at the treadmill. We have a treadmill in the apartment, and I thought, I really don't feel like going on the treadmill this morning. And then I sort of reminded myself, I said, Beatty, this is really not, this is not a good decision. And so I got myself up and put on my workout clothes and ran for 15 minutes in a very good quick speed. And after I was done, I felt so much better. I felt much more energized. And if we tend to give in, oftentimes, I think because of laziness or we're not in the mood or we don't feel motivated to do the things that are in our best interests. So if we don't feel motivated to do these things, we're really putting ourselves at risk in a variety of different kinds of ways. So it's always about asking ourselves on an ongoing basis whether we feel like it or whether we don't feel like it, whether or not this, whatever this is, happens to be good for us. And if it means pushing ourselves out of our laziness or out of our comfort zone, as I was certainly feeling this morning, I think we need to do a better job of pushing and not giving in to just letting things go. It's so interesting. People will say all the time, I need to stop drinking, or I should exercise, or I should lose weight, as if somehow there's going to be something coming from the sky that's going to take care of our issues. So again, it starts with us, that we need to get ourselves motivated in ways where we realize that the kind of motivation that is required to live a good life, it needs to come for us. And hopefully we have also, support from family and friends. And when I look at countries, around the world, and I always like to find out, how people who are seemingly doing the best, what are they doing? What are the countries doing that we are not doing? That have citizens that are happier, that are living longer, that are less depressed and less stressed. So for example, and I mean, we know this from Dr. Gary Null, we know this from all the studies, the importance of having and eating a Mediterranean diet and eliminating as much as possible, all the carbs and all the junk foods and all the processed foods. We know this, so that maybe today you might consider reading up a little bit on what exactly a Mediterranean diet is, and starting to do something really positive for you that is going to be helpful physically and mentally and emotionally and psychologically. And it's going to make you feel really, really good about yourself in terms of knowing that you are making good decisions that are good for you. Number two, again, making time for regular exercise. So, so, so important. I know a lot of people today are touting Ozempic and all kinds of drugs, weight loss drugs. And I mean, I'm not an MD, so I am not going to be talking about the pros and cons of these weight loss drugs. But what I do know is having a good diet and exercising regularly, including, weight training and yoga and meditation. I know that for me, it has worked throughout my entire life. At the end of the day, taking a bath or a sauna, socializing regularly and consistently with people who you have something in common with people who are nice, with people who are supportive, making sure that you're having sufficient sleep. And that means turning off your devices. I mean, there are people who are looking at their devices throughout the entire night, and then they're wondering, why am I feeling so tired, every single day? Again, the studies are clear about the importance of socialization and spending time again with supportive people, loving people, not people who are going to make you crazy, not toxic people. And I'm not talking about not having disagreements with people. We all have disagreements. I mean, nobody is going to agree on everything, but the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who are willing to engage in respectful debate about whatever the subjects are. These are the kinds of people who we want to let into our lives. Something else that studies have talked about and research findings have found to be very, very helpful is, positive visualization. And, I remember when I first started in the media, I was nervous, I was scared, I was new, I had no experience, of course, when we begin something new. Of course, we don't have experience. And I remember the importance of positive visualization, where I would actually, in my first media job was with ABC Radio in Providence, Rhode Island, and that was the first time that I hosted a call-in counseling Ask Beatty show. And I remember every show for a long, long time, I was nervous. And I would sit there, before the show, maybe 15, 20 minutes before, and I would see myself doing well. And then I was feeling, articulate, and then people were calling, and that my answers were really on point. And I found that it really, really helps a lot to be imagining instead of imagining all the negativity. And there is so much negativity around the world these days. To try to visualize beautiful, positive things that will help us relax and will help us feel calm and will help us feel just more connected in a positive way to life and to other human beings. Uh, the importance of spending time outdoors in nature. And I have found this to be something really, really, really helpful for me. Just, walking, taking a walk, looking at the trees. Um, it does such wonderful, wonderful, I think, calming things really for all of us. If we're just able to, change our routine a little bit. And we're very lucky. We live on a park, and during some of the most stressful times, I remember even during the pandemic, how calming it was to just be able to get outside and away from the traffic and away from the noise and just take a walk and try and take in the beauty and the joy that we experience when we are out in nature. A lot of people I have found, including myself, that having a pet. I've always had a dog, and I just think that there's something, if you happen to be an animal lover, I think that there's just something so wonderful to having a pet who loves you unconditionally, and hopefully who we love unconditionally if they're not, making us crazy at any different time. And just that relationship, I have always found it makes a difference. It certainly helps with loneliness, and you feel that you have a purpose. And of course there's a real responsibility, if you have pets. But I think that definitely I found, and I think studies have also found, that the pluses definitely outweigh the minuses. And what a wonderful way also to be able to connect with other people. Jim and I happen to live on the Upper West Side in New York City, and it seems like almost everybody, and I know that I'm overstating it, has a dog. And it's wonderful. Not only is the walking wonderful, the exercise wonderful, the getting into nature wonderful, but just being able to interact and to say hello, not to have heavy conversations necessarily, with people who you're meeting on the street. And I think that that kind of connection is just, it's so important for us emotionally and psychologically. So if you are someone who just may be contemplating, getting a dog or a cat, um, it may be something that you would find would add a lot of wonderful things to your life. Something else that I think that we oftentimes forget about is that the importance of giving to others. Of course, we want people to give to us, and we want people in our lives who have the capability of giving to us. But it's these small little things I have always found that make a really big difference in being able to give, in being able to, I was walking down the street this morning, and there was this really cute little boy, and he was carrying a backpack, and he probably was no more than 3 or 4, and there was a light. And I said, "Oh," I said, "are you going to school?" And his mom said, "Well, he was going to be meeting his teacher tomorrow." And it was just such a nice little lovely connecting interaction. And the little boy smiled, and the mother was really happy that I complimented her little boy and his backpack. And I find that these kinds of things, I mean, they not only do wonderful things for us, but what a lovely way to be able to try to connect with others, even though, we may never see, and I'm sure I would never see this little boy and his mother again. So again, thinking about, is there something that I can do today that would make somebody's life happier? Maybe it's a call, maybe it's a card, maybe it's an email, uh, maybe it's sending somebody a flower, and none of these things, of course, require money. It's just telling people that are important to us that we're thinking about you. And what a wonderful way to make somebody's day. And I think it's also a wonderful way to make our days as well. And then, of course, we all need to have, and we all need to find a purpose in our life that makes it important for us to get out of bed every day. And what is that purpose? Uh, and if you don't know, and if you haven't felt that you have a purpose, something that you've maybe, maybe haven't been able to find something tangible, maybe this is a good time to think about, what is important and what is my purpose in getting up every single day, other than only thinking about myself. Maybe it's volunteering. Maybe it's trying something different that you've never done before, that will definitely take you out of your comfort level. And these are lots and lots of things and lots of questions that I think we need to ask ourselves. Maybe, not on a daily basis, but on a regular basis, to just make sure that we are on a really good path for ourselves, which is why, every single week, I'm asking you to just sort of check in with your mental health and to also check in with your relationships to make sure that both are really on track, that you're doing well. And if you find over a period of weeks or months that things are off, then, the question then becomes, of course, you know, what am I willing to do about this? And of course, my mantra has always been the importance of acknowledging, addressing, and resolving as best as we can, even though we can't change our history, the things that continue to get in the way of our life and our relationships. So looking at our mental health, looking at our relationships, if substance abuse, happens to be an issue for you, are you finally willing to take some real responsibility? And I guess what it really boils down to is being good to you, doing what is in your best interest. And we're finding more and more that even moderate drinking is problematic when it comes to our physical, our physical health. So hopefully, as we go down the list of how are we doing, the sleep, the self-care, that you are able to honestly say to yourself, you know what? I am on a really good path. I made this change, I've made that change. I need to make this, and this change, but I feel that I am going in the right direction. And what it takes, of course, is honesty, and it takes a commitment, and it takes action. I mean, we can wish and we can hope for all kinds of things to happen in our life, and yet without action, uh, things probably are not going to materialize in the way that you would like. And in talking about action, in talking about change, I really, really hope that I have convinced you over the years that we don't need to do this on our own. And Hillary Clinton was right. It takes a village, it takes a team. The US tennis champions started a couple of days ago. And it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. I mean, I was number 10 in Canada as the junior, and my team consisted of my dad. That was it. And what is amazing is how many team members the top players in the world have working alongside them on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I was really surprised last night. I was watching some matches on television. There are grip specialists. I mean, people are using technology in ways that they, never had before, because we didn't have it years and years and years ago. But, the professional athletes know that in order to be successful, that we can't do this on our own. And I think this is a message that I really hope that all of you, and I know that I have really internalized this message in my own life over the years, knowing that I can't do this on my own. I need, luckily, the love and support of my husband, which I have, and a couple of friends, and that sustains me throughout good and bad times. And talking about tennis, I mean, things have, I don't know how many of you are interested in tennis or watch, the major tennis tournaments on television, but my oh my, has it ever become big business? from the clothes to the rackets, and also the prices of admission to the matches. I mean, you could pay thousands and thousands of dollars to get a front row seat at some of the major tournaments. And hopefully tomorrow, I'm actually planning to go to walk around and look at some of the matches. And I was very surprised to see this year that the cost of admission is very, very high. And this is just for a grounds pass. It's I think with taxes, you're talking close to $200. And I felt very, very angry when I saw this. And I know that over the years, I mean, obviously, there's prices change, and there's a need for, to raise prices, whether we're talking about in the grocery stores. But it becomes, a very privileged, well, also in the world of hockey and basketball and baseball, it's become a very privileged kind of world, the world of sports, where people are having to save or find hundreds of dollars in order to be able to actually be an in-person spectator at these events. So that was something that made me very, very upset. And I understand, players are making millions and millions of dollars. And of course, people who are beginning, they are not making millions and millions of dollars, and they're having to pay for travel, and coaches are expensive. But in a way, I feel it's sad that sports has become the kind a big, big business that ultimately it becomes available only for a small minority of people. Uh, my own coach was at the Wimbledon Championships this summer, and he was telling me that in order to get a front row seat at some of the Wimbledon matches, it was going to be $5,000. That's not something that he did. So okay, enough about big business and sport, but I do, if you are a tennis lover, the matches on television are really wonderful. Things have changed so much over the years, the rackets, the shoes, the technology, the crowds. I know last night, my husband and I, we were watching Medvedev playing a man from France, and there were some issues, to say the least, where the crowd was really out of control, and Medvedev was really out of control as well. And in my days, of course, my days began in Winnipeg, Canada, and that kind of behavior, it never, never, never would have been tolerated. We had to wear whites. There was decorum. If your opponent made a good shot, you routinely said good shot. And I will never, ever actually forget when I made my first appearance at the Canadians, the Junior Canadian Tennis Championships. I was representing Manitoba. And I saw some of the players, some of the older players, when they were frustrated, they would throw their rackets. And Beatty came back to Winnipeg and to my club, and out of frustration, or maybe needing to model what I thought, some of the older, more experienced players were doing, I threw my racket. And the president of the club, I will never forget the day he came up to me and he said, if you ever, ever do something like this again, you will not be allowed to play at the Winnipeg Tennis Club. And that was a message that I heard loudly and clearly. There was decorum, there were manners, there were thank yous, there were good shots. Of course, we were not competing for money. It was an entirely different world of tennis than the professional world of tennis today. But I think that my takeaway as a young tennis player, my dad was my coach. I played from the ages of 10 and, up until my recent surgery that I had in February of this year. I mean, I've been playing the best tennis of my life, and I'm really looking forward to getting back on the courts with hopefully um, the next few weeks. But it was a very civilized sport, at least in Canada, when I was growing up as a child. And I think that it's a takeaway that all of us need to ponder and think about not just thinking, but behaving in ways that are just more civilized, where there's less pushing, where there's less swearing. I understand that people are upset and frustrated and angry about all kinds of things that are going on in their lives, that are going on in the world today. But there is something to be said, and I was mentioning this to my husband. There's something to be said for good manners, and I don't think that we even use that word anymore. Good manners. Thank you. Please. I appreciate. And so I think it's important for all of us to pause. And I'm going to ask you something right now. Are there people today who you might want to call and let them know that you were thinking about them, or let them know that you appreciate what they've done, what they have said? Uh, and it's an important thing for all of us to actually do. And yes, I think that it's just something that we should never ever take for granted. We should never take that for granted. And so think about it. So really just kind of think about it. That maybe, maybe there's somebody in your history. Maybe there's someone that you've recently met that you would like to connect with. And for whatever reasons, you've been holding back or you've been too busy. But as I say to people all the time, time is really moving along. It's moving along very quickly for all of us. And in the final analysis, it is really, really about the quality and the kinds of relationships that we are nurturing in our life. That is ultimately what is going to make us happy. I think that we've been sold a false bill of goods, really believing that the bigger, better, more, the more money you have, that is going to bring us more happiness. And I've had interesting experiences over all these years where I've had an opportunity to work with, to treat some of the wealthiest people in the United States. And all I can tell you is that it is important to be able to have sufficient money so that you're not worried about paying your rent or paying your mortgage or putting food on the table for your children. But in the final analysis, it is absolutely, absolutely not the money that is going to bring you the happiness and joy and peace in your life. And I don't know how many of you think about this, right? I don't know how many of you actually believe this. But again, if we're looking at studies that have looked at, what is it? What is it that make people happy? It is not having the big mansion on the water, or the car that where people are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's simply not that at all. And I hope that in listening to the show, that there are really lessons to be
How am I
learned
gonna hear you?
that you are taking away from my point is that I really do hope every single week that there is a takeaway that you have from listening to the Ask Beatty show that can be helpful in very concrete kinds of ways. I talk a lot about lessons to be learned, lessons to be put into action. Maybe you didn't realize that it would be really an important thing to get up every day, whether you felt like it or whether you didn't feel like it, and exercise or take a walk. Or maybe you didn't think about the importance of trying to work through some issues and problems with a friend, that you really chose to kind of let the relationship go. So I'm hoping again that for every single show and every single time that you tune into the Ask BD show, that you feel that you've learned something, that you feel that it has been something that has been really really worthwhile for you. And I'd really love to hear from all of you. And if you go to my bdcone.com website, all of my contact information is there. And if there were any issues or subjects, specific issues, specific topics, specific subjects that you would like me to deal with on the show, that would be really, really helpful to know, because, since we're not seeing each other, since we're not interacting with each other, I am basically just making decisions every single week about the kinds of subjects and about the kinds of issues that I think would be interesting, for you. But I need some feedback. I want to make sure every single week that I am actually on the right track, that the kinds of material that I am talking about is material that is interesting, to you, and hopefully not only interesting, but that it is also helpful as well. So I really encourage you to go to my beatcone.com website, and you can just send me an email. I mean, maybe you wanted to talk about or hear about, some of the latest studies in depression. Maybe you want to hear about some of the work that's being done with psychedelics. So again, as I say, I really encourage you to interact with me and let me know if there is any material that you would like me to cover. Well, I'm looking at the clock, and it's amazing how this hour goes by so very quickly. And I really want to leave you with my two weekly messages. Of course, the first, of course, and we've talked about this really today for the entire show, is making sure that you are living your life in ways that are really in your best interest, and that you are being good to yourself, and that you are asking yourself throughout your days, is this good for me, whatever this is, and that you are being honest with yourself. And in fact, that you are on a the other thing, of course, that we need to not only think about, but that we also need to put into action, is that we all need to be doing a much, much, much better job in trying to understand the other, engage with the other, debate with the other. Because if we live our lives in a black and white way, where we have winners and losers, and where we have people believing that you're right and I'm wrong, it will never, ever, ever help to bring together people in a society that will be loving and where we will actually see peace, not only personally, but also politically. So I hope that you have a really good rest of the day, and I will see you next, actually 2 weeks from now, um, because next Monday is Labor Day, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. So take care of yourself, and let's do a better job in taking care and respecting and trying to understand the other. Bye, everybody.